And welcome to the Mulligan Stew Podcast. I'm T.D. Mulligan, thus the name. The basic show that I always do every Saturday, and I love it, is Mulligan Stew on the CKUA Radio Network. Usually these interviews are the complete interview, the conversation, because you got to cut them down, add music for radio play. This one just allows you the chance to hear everything, but that's what conversation is about. This is the conversation with Luke Doucet, Melissa McClelland of Whitehorse. And just a reminder that there's a video version of this interview, and it can be found on the Terry David Mulligan YouTube channel. I think it's their 8th album. And in this conversation, we're going to talk about going full circle, because this is a country album. This is not just a current country album. This is a 70s country type album. And the thing that they pull off that is so magical is that they know that music. They know the notes. They know when to play, when not to play, what words to use, the phrasing. The whole feel of 70s country is captured in this new album called I'm Not Crying, You're Crying. There are other artists and groups that would love to do this, but they didn't live it. These two, Luke and Melissa, they understand this. They've studied this. They know their roots. They know their mentors, the people that they've studied along the way. They messed around with blues and rhythm and blues and rock and roll and folk. And they have seemed to have come back full circle to country music, but not today's country music, 70s country music, which we'll play today. The reviews have been sensational for this album. This is going to be a big-time game breaker for Whitehorse, and rightly so. They've earned it every step of the way. And they've done it by being a mom and dad to Jimmy, their son. He's now coming on the road with them. They're homeschooling him. Well, we're going to talk about all of that. We're going to talk about all of that stuff, all of it and more. I'm even going to ask Luke Doucet, who is a really fine guitarist, or like studies guitar and guitar players, about Jeff Beck, the loss of Jeff Beck, things like that. So here you go. If you're ready, it's time for another visit from Jimmy's mom and dad, Melissa McClelland and Luke Doucet, Whitehorse. I'm Terry David Mulligan. This is The Stew and the Mulligan Stew Podcast. Whitehorse have arrived. Luke and Melissa are here in Winnipeg. So
that is correct.
So it begs the question, where is home? I know that you're road people. You've proven yourself over and over again. You love the road. You are fine with the road. The road is your home. But where's home?
Yeah. We ask ourselves this question all the time. And, myself, for being such a great homebody in a way, I'm still very transient in my ideas around home and what home is. And we really have made our home in all these different places. This year it's Winnipeg. This is where Luke's from. So I guess this truly could be home for you, right?
Yeah, well, my mother passed in August, and we thought she had more time. We didn't realize that she had as little time as she did. So we planned to be here for a year so we could be close to her, so that our son Jimmy would have a chance to get close to his granny. Yep. And yeah, I grew up here, and my brother's here, and he and I are really close. And I've got a bunch of friends in the music community that are still, I consider very, very dear friends. So I feel very much at home here, and I love this town. But we've tried to move out of Toronto in the past. We tried to move to Nashville. We tried to move to Hamilton. We tried to move to New York. And each of those attempts was kind of a failure. We ended up sort of feeling like, but there's something about the west end of Toronto that feels good. And we'd end up going back. Yeah. And I don't know, where people are, your family. I mean, I think that we're it's only been a short period of time in the grand scheme of human history that we've lived as far away from our loved ones and our families as we do now. And up until 100 years ago, it was unheard of pretty much that you'd live far away from your parents and grandparents and your kids. Everybody sort of lived close together. And so I feel like the simple answer to your question is home is where you can be as close to your people as possible.
Because I've been doing interviews, I may have mentioned this previously, just under lockdown situations. And I can't tell you how many times I heard the story. I finally got to see my kids grow up. I took them to school. I could pick them up. It's all the things that I had missed. And so my next question was, are you prepared to change anything about what you do? And the answer was mostly no. I'm still going to go on the road. So I'm going to do it, but I'm going to write songs of being on the road. Thus,
well,
all things come full circle.
We are a family on the road.
Yes, you are.
And Jimmy, our son, has always come on the road with us. Not all the time. Sometimes we have to leave him behind, but obviously we didn't do that through the pandemic. And, for the first time we got to really have this at-home routine, which, most people in the world have that. And we've never had that. So it was actually pretty sweet. We homeschooled Jimmy for a year, and it was really actually a beautiful experience for all three of us to be able to do that. And it gave us some confidence. We want to keep Jimmy in school, obviously, but we saw how much he thrived in that situation. And so now we feel okay about the idea of pulling him from school and bringing him on tour and homeschooling him on the road for little chunks of time. And we've done that since the pandemic, since, we've been touring again, we've done that, and it's gone really well. So
in that year or two that you were together like that, did he pick up a guitar?
No, he picked up the piano. He didn't pick the piano up, but he does play the piano, and he got a set of electronic drums this year for Christmas, and he loves to play the drums, and he loves to play the piano and sing.
Yeah.
So he's really super into music.
He's dying to be in the band. I was running some songs last night, just rehearsing, because we're about to go to the UK for Americana Fest.
Showcase it, yeah.
So I was running some tunes. Just he was supposed to be getting ready for bed. I was sitting on the couch running some songs, and he just snuck up with his drumsticks and sat down and just jammed with me. It's the sweetest thing ever. He's just,
oh my God,
he wants in, and that's not going to last very much longer. At some point, he's not going to think we're the coolest band in the world for very long, but right now he does. So that's pretty nice.
I mean, I think that if he keeps practicing, by the time he's 15 or 16, he's going to be good enough to actually be in the band, and then we're going to have to pay him, and then he's going to have a job, and we're never going to get rid of him.
All right, a couple of things right off the top. I'm coming your way, Luke, with a question. But you are going to an Americana festival, not in Nashville, not in New York, not in Los Angeles. It's in London. Oh my God! And you have 2 nights, 2 days, 2 sessions, and you're surrounded by friends that you know. Yeah. What a great showcase that is! Fantastic.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. I often think about this because we would go over to the UK and to Holland and different parts of Europe, in the early White Horse days when our music was sort of, because we've kind of come full circle. Not that we were making country music the way we are now, but we were making it something that might be more akin to Americana when we first started, and then we've deviated and come back. So we were spending more time around the Americana world, and there is a certain reverence for American folk art in England and Holland and Germany, and I think it's that as they watch as American culture gets more and more sort of I don't know, plasticized, if that's the right way of referring to it, that the last vestiges of American folk art tend to exist within the music, like the earthiness and the leather and the wood and the steel that's so intrinsic to the sound of that music is something that people have a lot of reverence for. So it's an interesting thing to go over there. It's not the same as going to Nashville or Austin to play. They have almost a more anthropological take on what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And they're kind of studying. They really are. They're going to school on you guys.
A little bit. And sometimes they want to talk about it. Like they want to pick your brain. You get tested for which, how, the esoterica of which records are you stealing from? And are you familiar with this? And it's like, I don't know, man, you're freaking me out.
I just think it's fantastic. You're in London and you're playing in London. You're not tourists. You're going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for that, those sessions or Americana sessions, normally you would do tunes from your new album, Crying, but they might want to see you showcase 2, 3, 4 albums back. What are you going to do?
I think we're going to stick pretty close to the new record.
Okay,
we're so excited by it.
Yeah.
We're just enjoying it. We're having a good time with it. We want to play those songs right now.
The response to the album is fantastic. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And so we in our own private little listening sessions, me all by myself in this, what used to be a barn, I'm saying this is, immediately, Emily, find me. Yeah, but hook me up, get me, check it. I got to talk to these guys. I'm just excited, and to realize that other people are sharing that excitement is a big deal. It's a big deal, and I'm very happy for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not crying, you're crying. The second question, Luke, is to you, specifically because of your guitar nature. We lost Jeff Beck.
Yeah.
And I got to interview him with Rod Stewart on that Truth Tour. And I was just, I knew what was coming out on stage, but I had no idea that the sound would wash over me like that. Was he a mentor? Did you hear things in his music that you added?
I feel like the things that I got from Jeff Beck, for one thing, that he was part of the trifecta of Clapton, Beck, and Page, going back to the Yardbirds days, and obviously that was hard not to be aware of that. I also admired the fact that he never went the pop route, and he stuck to his guns, and made music that he felt strongly about that was more intimate. So I always appreciated that. But I think from the sound, his actual playing, he plays with his fingers mostly, and a metaphor that I've always thought was appropriate to describe the guitar players that I've always really loved, and that that whether that's somebody like Mark Knopfler or Chet Atkins or Jay Nowicki from the Perpetrators here in Winnipeg, Manitoba, who I think is fantastic. I always describe them as having a very short cable. So the guitar cable between their mind and my ears is really short, as opposed to being really, really, really long. And Jeff Beck is one of those people. He plays with his hands, and it sounds like your ear is right up against his brain. And there's not much distortion. There's not much noise between his ideas and your ear. And I think that's I don't know if everybody would agree with that take, but I feel like that's his legacy as a player.
Would it surprise you to know he had a wicked sense of humor?
Kind of. He always seemed a bit dour.
Dour, yes, on stage, yes, dour, but wickedly funny backstage, very funny. And he took a gobs of liberties with Rod Stewart because he was a very easy target with the hair and stuff. Okay, let me get to this album. I want to play some tracks. By the way, you were described in one of the articles as quirky. I don't see you as quirky. I see you as your own people, and you're going to play the game the way you want to play the game, and live your lives the way you want to live your life. But I did recognize somebody described you as having a droll edge. Yes, your sense of humor shows itself. So it's wonderful. I want to ask you about first of all, because I'm an ex-Mountie. Division 5.
I didn't know you were an ex-Mountie.
Yeah.
Really? Straight up. That's amazing. Okay, so it's just simple enough narrative. Guys gets his heart broken, and he's so sad and desperate that he finally sort of checks himself into a local RCMP dispatcher, and he files a missing persons report, but not really on his lost love, but really on himself, because he's so lost. I guess that's the droll part, I suppose. And then he gets mocked and derided by the cops, who have bigger fish to fry, except one cop happens to be a sympathetic or an empathetic country singer himself, and he pulls him aside and he sings him a country song and he sends him on his way. And it's just the idea of humanizing people who might not otherwise find common ground in a sort of sympathetic environment. That's all. It was interesting though, when I wrote the song and when I brought it to Six Shooter, to Shauna, and I was like, is this an awkward time to be humanizing the police? Like in our cultural climate, because, are you allowed to say empathetic things, even though they're fictional, about the police officers? And then maybe you're not. Maybe we're not supposed to tell that story. Maybe that's a story that's not supposed to be told right now. And ultimately, I was like, you know what? It's a story, and I can't change. If I changed it to the fire department, or I changed it to the Manitoba Hydro,
wouldn't quite work.
It's going to lose its flair. He has to be a cop.
Yeah,
it's got to be a Mountie.
Got to be a Mountie.
You guys once told me, I just love this interview that we did a couple of years back. About you're constantly asked if you live these lives, these songs, these words, and one of you or both of you agreed, no, it's a combination of personal self-reflection and BS.
Yeah.
So how's the balance in this album?
I would say exactly that. There are definitely a lot of personal moments on this record and personal songs, but we definitely had some fun with creating characters. There's always truth in the stories. There's always a thread of truth that runs through.
Sometimes
we're always pulling from something personal in a way, but we're also writers. So we want to have fun with it. We want to create these ideas. I mean, I often start with an image, a picture of something or someone or colors, or, there's always a visual for me before I start writing. So, that always kind of fuels the storytelling.
And is it best if we don't know? Is it best?
I think that's a really good question. It's not so much that it's best that you don't know, but you don't pay me enough to be honest about it.
How much do you want?
I just want to pay my mortgage, man.
Just like the rest of us.
Yeah. To Melissa's point, there is autobiography in literally everything that we do. There's also fiction in most things that we do, but I think the elements of our songs that are truly autobiographical would surprise people if they knew exactly what they are, and they're not going to know. And to your question, like, is it better that they don't know or they do know? I don't think it matters.
Oh yeah, there's probably more truth than people think.
Yes, definitely. There's definitely more truth than they think. But ultimately, does it matter? Like when I think about the songs that have moved me in my life, I was thinking about John Prine's "Illegal Smile" the other day, where it's a song where he eats a whole bunch of trucker speed and stays up all night and has a great time, and the next day he locks himself in a closet and he's paranoid, delusional, and then the cops finally find him and they throw him in front of the judge, and he's just basically saying, if you see me tomorrow with an illegal smile. And then at the end of it, he's like, I really never hurt anyone. And I don't care if that's real or not. I don't care. Why would I care? I think about Tom Waits or Elvis Costello and all these fantastical songs. Tom Waits writing about falling down drunk and being a complete moron. He hasn't had a drink since 1988. It doesn't matter.
My baby left town on the 219. Sorry, I'm back with John Hammond and Tom Waits in the studio.
Oh yeah.
He had to be convinced to do it, and then he took over the sessions. It was fantastic. Now here's the thing. This has been described, and rightly so, as a 70s type country album. These songs and these people. I look back on your blues and your rock, and your country and your blues again, your R&B, your soul. And I wonder if country was always there. Was it the basement that you built upon?
Yeah, absolutely. And, even in our solo work, there was so much country. In our first year of marriage, we moved to Nashville, spent a year there, made that home for a while. And we were working on solo records at that time. I was working on my record Victoria Day, which is a real throwback. Yeah. Has a real throwback country sound. Mm-hmm. And we were listening to a ton of Graham and Emmylou at that time. And I think it was really planting the seed for us. We hadn't started White Horse yet. It wasn't even an idea yet. And as I kind of weave my way through our White Horse catalog, I do see and hear all of those elements, the country, the Graham and Emmylou kind of harmonizing and storytelling, and the grooves and the overall vibe. There certainly is a lot of that.
I would say that other than this record that we've just released, the second most country record that we ever made would be our first record. So I think that answers your question. Like it was there from the very beginning, and we've always I think this, if predictions our own actually are accurate at all, and we're not great prognosticators, but if we were, I would say that we're probably going to stick in this lane for a while, maybe forever. I'd be pretty happy to stick in this lane. I would be. I mean, who knows? Really? Who knows? Never say never.
What about the blues people you brought along? You hooked me. I'm lock, stock, and barrel. I'm hooked.
Yeah. Okay. I mean,
I know. I really love doing that stuff. I really do.
We'll see. Yeah. I just think that if you go back, it's funny because the blues was a big part of our first record too, our self-titled EP. It was that perfect, like where blues and country music meets. I think about Pete Anderson as a guitar player who played with Dwight Yoakam, and he was a blues player who could play country like he's so good. But the fact that he was a blues player really made his country guitar playing interesting. But I also think we talked about Tom Waits a little bit. He's another perfect example where he'll blend country music and blues together in a cool way. It seems so obvious. Like this seems like such a pedestrian conversation about those two things that even Jimmy, who's 8 years old, he says to me, yeah, country and blues had a baby and they called it rock and roll. He knows that, and he's only 8 years old, but here we are still talking about it because for some reason it's still like that quip that I think it was Keith Richards said, that it's rock and roll, man. If you make rock without the roll, you ain't got shit. And I think, no, he's onto something.
Yep. He's got to have the roll. Country music wants real country music. Not that country music. Real country music wants to remind you how miserable you were the night before, or the day of, or whatever, or so somebody walked out of your life. But at the same time, you guys have a philosophy between you that your music can be a release. Forget some of the problems at the door. Sit down, join us. This music is going to wash over you, and maybe we can give you some relief from what's ailing you, or maybe you find some answers in what's ailing you in our words and songs. So is there a conflict in those two camps?
Well, I think country music is fun, even when it's a tear in your beer and you're crying over something, there's still something playful about it. And, we named our record, I'm Not Crying, You're Crying. And that kind of expresses both of those things, that it's serious, but not serious.
Not serious, yes.
Yeah.
Although we were just talking about Dwight Yoakam, I still find if we're on the road driving, especially if we're in the States and we're heading towards Tennessee or Kentucky or whatever, Texas, if I put on that record, which is Guitars Cadillacs, I guess is that record, and the song South of Cincinnati, have you ever been south of Cincinnati? I scream it. I just sing it so loud, and I actually get emotional because it's such a beautiful, and I feel the same way about L.A. County, Lyle Lovett's L.A. County. I find there's so much emotional content in those songs, and there's something. They're so facile. Like, of course, they're pulling on your heartstrings, and they're not subtle about it. They're not pulling on your heartstrings in a subtle way that like Andy Schaaf might do it. It's like, this is overt. You're supposed to cry now, and I do. Like, I dance. I'm the monkey who dances on demand. When it comes to that kind of music, for whatever reason, I don't know.
Have you had songs overcome you on stage, the two of you?
All the time.
Oh, absolutely.
Every show.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How does it show itself? How does it show itself?
I turn my back to the audience every show for a minute because I need a second.
Yeah. No, we definitely get the lump in our throat sometimes. I mean, a lot of the songs are deeply personal, and depending what's going on in our lives.
All right.
Sometimes, we played one show. It was one of our first shows after, the last lockdown. And we were both just kind of trying to hold it together on stage because we felt so emotional just being up there playing songs again for people.
You look down at the audience and one person is singing along to your song. I'm a mess.
Or Jimmy, we have our son Jimmy in the audience, and he's dancing and singing, and that's a beautiful thing to see.
When you feel like the industry's dying.
That reminds me of something. It was Jim Cuddy that said, they're at Mariposa. Lightfoot's audience is out there. Their audience is out there. And he's looking at the faces in the front rows that he can see. And he realizes there's a whole new generation sitting in there, those seats. They brought their kids. But their kids have grown, and they've grown up with Gordon Lightfoot and Blue Rodeo and Little Feat or whatever.
My parents used to take me to see Gordon Lightfoot at Massey Hall. And that's a childhood memory of mine.
And what did it feel like standing on that stage singing at Massey Hall?
Oh, I mean,
come on.
Yeah, that's a dream come true right there. Yeah.
It's hard to put that. It's hard to put that into words, and it's also hard to talk about it without sounding trite or banal, or like it's what can be said. I don't know what can be said that everybody hasn't said better. I don't know. You know what I'm talking about, but you're right.
I might get over this, but I won't stop loving you. Could be a tearjerker on the right day. Could be.
Yeah. It could be.
Oh,
yeah, it is. It is. I mean, it's got enough tempo to. I don't know. I mean, I'm amazed that somebody else hasn't used that title before, or at least the first half of it. I might get over this, but whatever. That was amazing to me when I wrote that. I was like, I'm sure that somebody else has done this. I couldn't believe nobody had.
I have a title for your next album. Not the title, maybe a single.
Yeah.
A book just came out called The 5-Bottle Bar.
Oh,
you could do the 1-bottle bar or whatever.
Yeah.
I just thought, Right, and it's really good. It's a great read. It's a fantastic read. It's written by Jessica Schacht, who distills here on Vancouver Island. She's very good, and the 5-bottle bar. You know, right? Anyway, I just like
it. Sounds good. The 5-bottle bar sounds kind of dive bar and working class, but the idea like bougie cocktails doesn't go well with our image as rough and tumble working class country stars.
What else? Oh my! I need to get you to talk about a couple of tracks on the album, and rather than me put myself in that position, I'd rather you step forward and let me know what is your favorite track and why, Melissa.
I would say Division 5. We already chatted about that song, but when Luke played that song for me, that's when I realized, okay, you're onto something, and I've got to get on board here and start writing.
What was that something? What was it? What direction did he headed?
There was something, you know what? It's funny. There was something about that song that reminded me of a song that he wrote on his first solo record, Aloha Manitoba, New Orleans.
Oh, yeah.
Damn, this ain't New Orleans, and I'm getting over it. And it's like a very intimate finger picking. And that was the song that introduced me to Luke's music. And I approached him because I fell in love with that record because of that song. And when he played Division 5, there was something that reminded me of it. And I hadn't heard him write something like that in a long time. Anyways, it excited me and it moved me. It's a beautiful song and it's a funny song. And it's, it kind of just, you know, that's what got my creativity going. I would say for the finished product of music on this record, I was really happy with the way The Road turned out.
I think The Road is maybe, it's a high water mark for me because of, like, when I first heard Melissa, she sent me a demo tape that I got in a brown envelope that ended up in the mail, and I was living in Vancouver. This was over 22 years ago. And I listened to it, and there was something about an easiness of the direct delivery that I thought was so perfect and rare. It's so rare. People tend to overdo it. Everybody over embellishes their thing, especially singers who are known as good singers. They tend to play their hand too early and too frequently. But Melissa didn't do that, and there was a maturity in that. And she was only 23 at the time. And on The Road, she channels. And I don't know if this was deliberate. She channels. There's an Anne Marie thing that's going on that and that I think is so beautiful. And Anne Marie has this candid way of delivering a thing without overdoing it that I always thought was so charming and special. But also the metaphor, to take that simple metaphor of, you know, of the road as the actual literal road, a place where we go and play music, we go on the road, but also the metaphorical idea of life is a long road, life is a highway.
Yeah.
And that it's ending. Is it ending? And I thought it was a perfect way. Like, there's so many ways of interpreting that, including the fact that we were in the midst of a pandemic where we weren't sure if the music industry was going to continue to exist. So I thought that she nailed 3 or 4 different beautiful things all in once.
Thank you. I loved writing that song because, you know, my number one passion in life is music, but my second passion is travel and the road, just being on the open road. And this was such a love song to the road. And I felt like this genre really allowed me to play up the sentimentality or the nostalgia that I was feeling.
But you also nailed some real heartache. Like, there's some real sadness and some, you know, again, the metaphor about things ending, about life ending or relationships ending or I don't know. You managed to capture all that stuff.
Tell me what you missed most about The Road. What one thing did you miss the most? It might have been internal.
Well, I personally miss the simplicity of life. Like, you know, having one important thing to do, to be responsible for, versus a million small things. Yeah. It's not like soldiers often talk about. They come home after doing a tour of duty and they have to confide to people in their lives that they miss war. And it's like, that's crazy. There's death all around you. It's like, no, I miss having one responsibility that's really, really important. And I think when you're on the road, it's like that. You have one thing. All I have to do is make sure that I get on stage at 8:00 tonight and that I'm healthy and sober and I can sing and I'm able to do my job. It's really important to do that one thing. Everything else is in service of that one thing. And I miss that.
Yeah, it's funny how, a lot of people get stressed out with travel. But it's kind of the opposite for us, because we would come home off the road and be home for a week, and it would be like, oh, we've got all this stuff we need to do. We got to, pay these bills and get this thing taken care of, and book all these appointments, and we'd cram it into this small amount of time that we had at home. And then we'd leave, and as soon as we'd step in the airport or get in the tour van or whatever mode of transportation we were taking, there was this kind of sense of breathing out and being home. It was like, oh, okay, now, because it's our life, it's our work, it's what we do. And, like Luke was saying, it's we have one thing to do, and that is our job, is to be on the road and play music. And it's very clear. It's not complicated. There isn't this like big to-do list of things that we have to accomplish that day. It's quite simple.
Follow-up question. How sober?
Oh, we have a policy, no more and no less than one drink to go on stage. We have a one drink rule. You have to have at least one, but you can't have more than one. And then you can bring one on the road. You can bring one on stage with you. So ultimately, by the end of the show, you had.
And what is the drink?
Well, I can't.
I have a beer before I go on stage,
and I would prefer to have a beer, but I can't because it makes me burp. And then when I sing, I burp, and I'm not a very good singer. So I need to have all cylinders firing. So I have a glass of wine, and I really like red wine. It's not the best for singing, but
it's good for you.
It's good for you in every other way.
And do you have a pre-show ritual just before you step out?
Not really. I mean, little kiss and have a good show.
Yeah. No, we like to be alone before the show. Like sometimes family or friends will say, hey, we'll come and hang out before the show. I'm like, no. We need to be alone. After the show, we'll have a drink, but before the show, leave us alone.
Yeah. We usually have an instrument in our hands backstage, and we're just kind of in the zone.
Okay, Leave Me As You Found Me. You love singing it? You're going to love singing that.
What's that?
You're going to love singing that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this one feels good to sing. I wrote this one after I was listening a lot to Loretta Lynn, who, of course, just passed away. So I think I was kind of, trying to channel a bit of that energy.
Also Dan Savage.
And Dan Savage, because we're big Dan Savage fans. He's the sex advice columnist from Seattle, who's been around forever. And he had this phrase, it's a campsite rule. Yeah. So when you're dating someone who's younger than you have to employ the campsite rule, which is to leave it better than you found it.
That's right.
And so obviously this song is not about dating someone younger. But it is this kind of desperate plea to, take care of my heart as you're breaking it. Please just show mercy, show some mercy.
All right. 6 Feet Away. That one we know.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's nothing really political about this record, but if anything, that song acknowledges the fact that, that there are many things that sort of put us in a headspace where we thought we needed to be distant from our fellow humans. Yeah. Obviously the pandemic, literally wear a mask, cross the street, avoid people. The lingering effects of that are that we seem to be ever more suspicious and more bifurcated in society. These people don't like these people, and people talk about tribalism, and some people hyperbolically talk about the prospects of potential civil war or what have you, and that's maybe a bit much. But nonetheless, I think there's this feeling in life of this need to be distant and this need to dehumanize ourselves, and people spend more and more time, staring into this thing. Yeah. And children are having a hard time relating to one another because they're gaming all the time, and social media is exacerbating tribal differences, and I just feel like I hope that's not going to be the legacy of the sadness and the loneliness and the alienation that we felt from COVID, is that we're just going to double and triple down on mistrusting our neighbors. And I feel like that's a bit of where we're at, and I think it's a shame. Don't forget to deep breathe, okay? Deep breathe now. Here we go. Here we go. Somebody described this album and a couple of the songs in it as 70s Dolly Parton territory. Dolly just announced she's doing a rock and roll record.
I heard that.
So everybody's working opposite sides of the street. What's going on here?
Yeah, I know. I got to hear that.
I mean, it used to be that you had your music determined your community, your clothes. Back when I was growing up, if you were a wealthy preppy kid, you'd listen to like new wave or new romantic music. If you were working class, you had to listen to like heavy metal or rock and roll and wear leather and long hair. And if you were a jock, well, you probably didn't listen to music at all. And that's the Breakfast Club. But those days have changed. And we don't like, none of us listen to music that way anymore. We all have jazz, we all have country and blues and rock and roll and hip hop, and in our music so-called collections.
And the kids are listening
to all of it.
Mm-hmm.
They're listening, and
like
they're soaking it up.
Our son Jimmy, like he likes Jimmy Reed blues. He loves listening to country music. He thinks it's hilarious, and pop music and everything. He loves Led Zeppelin. He loves Supergrass. My 8-year-old loves Supergrass.
Well, what's next? Weezer?
He loves Weezer. He
loves Weezer.
He was playing along to Weezer yesterday on the drums.
Well, I can't wait to hear that thing. One final thing, Melissa. Tammy Nielsen grew up in Canadian country in a family. And she was the kid singing, and an adorable kid. And then she fell in love with a New Zealand man, moved to New Zealand, and then tried to revive her career, and has done so. She's railing against the lack of women's voices in country music. And her King of Country is a name that comes out at me. And she's really saying, what happens if the King of Country music is a woman? She's pushing those buttons. I just wonder what you might have a thought on that as we leave.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I've listened to so many iconic female voices and writers. Shania, Emmylou, Loretta, Dolly. I mean, yeah, I mean, I really connect well to the female voice. So the more the better, I say. And, to have an even kind of platform for male and female voices is absolutely what we should strive for.
Last question. How long? Thank you for that. Thank you. How long do we have to wait for more Western dates?
Oh, well, we're going to have festival dates in the summer. The festivals, I mean, as you know, being a West Coaster, the sadness of the Vancouver Folk Music Festival and Constellation in Squamish potentially pulling the plug. They haven't committed either way. Doesn't bode well for us. It's really sad. Yeah. But we'll do a proper Western run probably in the fall. It's hard to say. We don't know yet. We're going to do an Eastern run in the spring and summer festivals, and hopefully they'll get us into BC. But it's at this point, we don't know exactly.
Yeah, we shall see.
I'm hoping that somebody picks up that ball and runs with it. That someone comes along with maybe some deeper pockets but just keeps the quality alive. That's all. Yeah. Open doors, I thank you for your time. I thank you for your music. This is going to be an incredible story to watch unfold. Enjoy every minute of it, every standing O, all those backstage kisses, and we'll be thinking about you. I'll live with the music till I see you live.
Thank you so much.
We should drink wine one night.
Yes, we should. I'm now in the wine business.
Okay. Really?
I've made a Bordeaux blend, and it's just being released now.
Oh, yes?
So it's called Q&A.
Of course, it's called Q&A. So it's a Merlot, Cab Franc, Cab Sauvignon.
It is all of that and more, and it just got ratings of 91, 92, 93, and 94 points.
Whoa!
From the big boys.
All right, congrats.
So we're off and running. That's the Mulligan Stew Podcast for this week, the end of January. That album, by the way, as I was talking into this microphone, became the #1 album on the CKUA Top 30. Like you got to get a lot of plays over a lot of different shows in order to be #1. And they did, and they will. They'll continue to do it. They're just getting started with I'm Not Crying, You're Crying. So check them out. And if you get a chance to see them live, they've already toured a bit in the West in Canada and down in the States. But when festival season kicks in, you're going to see a lot of them. And they've earned that. They've earned that place on the stage. Luke Doucet, Melissa McClelland, Whitehorse, I'm Not Crying, You're Crying. And just a reminder that there's a video version of this interview, and it can be found on the Terry David Mulligan YouTube channel. Enjoy. All right. Next week, I think, and it will be an interview with Terry Wickham, the producer of the Edmonton Folk Festival, one of the great ones anywhere. And the Vancouver Folk Festival announced that they will not be staging a festival this year, 2023, and may not be back at all, which is just a crazy blow to the entire music business and everybody who needs a lift up and a showcase. And so the person to talk to was Terry McBride, because he understands the lay of the land. I needed to know if that could be rescued, if there was anything we could do as an audience, or the business itself. And so we'll get some answers from Terry Wickham next week on the Mulligan Stew Podcast. Have yourself a great weekend and a great week. Be safe, be careful. Thank you.